Welcome back, focused learners. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for another explainer. Today, we're setting the stage for a seriously fast-paced, high-energy dive into the surprising, kind of bizarre, and deliciously fascinating history of America's favorite summer holiday, the 4th of July. We are going to unpack exactly how this day evolved from a super formal colonial gathering into the backyard, firework-filled, hot dog gorging spectacle we all know today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I mean, how in the world did we go from refined colonial traditions, like eating turtle soup, to the modern extreme of literally inhaling 76 hot dogs in 10 minutes? Right? The cultural shift is massive, and tracing the breadcrumbs of this evolution actually reveals so much about American history.
Section 1. Colonial Feasts and Origins.
Okay, I want you to picture the Founding Fathers at the very first Independence Day celebrations back in 1776 and 1777. When these early American leaders gathered, the civil proceedings were highly formal. They were heavily focused on reinforcing those big egalitarian principles. But what's really fascinating is that the culinary spread accompanying these gatherings was incredibly different from the backyard cookouts we see today. Honestly, not a hot dog in sight.
Instead of grilling up hamburgers, colonial Americans leaned heavily into what was available locally. It's actually legendary that John and Abigail Adams reportedly feasted on a classic New England spread. We're talking poached salmon with egg sauce, green peas, and boiled new potatoes, all followed by an apple pandowdy for dessert.
And then there was this dish, turtle soup. It was actually a massive colonial staple. Early settlers ate their fill of green snapping turtles simply because they were just incredibly abundant. And get this, here's a fun, surprising fact. A large snapping turtle reportedly contains 7 distinct types of meat. And people say they taste like everything from pork and chicken to shrimp and goat. Wild, right? But hey, don't go looking for this on a modern menu. Today, sea turtles are protected under the Endangered Species Act, and eating one in America is literally a federal felony.
Section 2. Victorian Stunts and Spectacles.
So as we moved into the 19th century, the holiday really started to morph. Victorian Americans loved a good show, and they began incorporating wild games, flamboyant parades, and just bizarre public stunts. Take 1876, for example. To celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, a tightrope walker named Maria Spelterini crossed Niagara Falls. But wait, she didn't just walk it. She did it backwards, wearing high heels, and get this, with peach bushels strapped to her feet. I mean, it perfectly captures that flamboyant, spectacle-driven spirit that had totally taken over the holiday.
This era of spectacle also birthed a uniquely North American tradition. Just 2 years later, in 1878, just over the border in Toronto, we see the very first recorded pie-eating contest. It actually started as a humble charity fundraiser where the grand prize was simply a handsomely bound book. But the concept was a massive hit. It quickly became an absolute staple at county fairs across the continent. Section 3. The Great American Cookout.
Over time, those massive public spectacles eventually made their way into the backyard, combining with culinary traditions to create the modern cookout. And well, you really can't talk about a cookout without talking about barbecue. The word actually derives from the Spanish barbacoa, which traces all the way back to the indigenous Taino people of Hispaniola. In the early 1800s, political leaders in Virginia began adopting these exact methods. They'd smoke whole pigs or oxen over these massive pits, just to draw huge crowds to their Independence Day political rallies. Food essentially became the ultimate magnet for public gatherings. Let's move along and see how this builds, because while barbecue was dominating the South and Midwest, something else entirely was brewing in New York. In the 1860s, German immigrants brought over Dachshund sausages. Then, by 1870, Charles Feltman opened his Coney Island stand, and he had the genius idea to put them in a bun. Fast forward to 1916, his former employee, Nathan Handwerker, opens his own stand, selling them for half the price. And today, well, Americans consume an estimated 150 million hot dogs on the 4th of July alone. That is a staggering amount of hot dogs.
Section 4. The Competitive Eating Phenomenon.
For some people, eating a couple of hot dogs at a backyard cookout just isn't enough. Those humble hot dogs have actually spawned an extreme athletic spectacle that is now completely synonymous with the holiday. Now, legend has always said that the famous Nathan's hot dog eating contest started back in 1916 when 4 immigrants competed to prove their patriotism. But guess what? That is a complete myth. Seriously. In 2010, promoter Mortimer Matz admitted that he totally fabricated that patriotic immigrant origin story in the 1970s as a PR stunt. The media absolutely ate it up, and a modern myth was born.
Today, though, the contest is serious business. It has a highly regulated structure.
Competitors have a strict 8 to 10-minute time limit. They are allowed to dunk the buns in water to soften them up, but there are strict limits on exactly how often they can do that. Plus, they must maintain a clean eating surface, and they actually face deductions for excess debris. The whole shebang is overseen by a master of ceremonies and a very serious panel of judges. Now, what's really interesting about this is one of the most fascinating strategies they use right at the buzzer. It's called chipmunking, and it is exactly what it sounds like. Eaters will quite literally stuff their cheeks full of food in the final seconds of the countdown. But the rules state they are given a very short grace period, usually less than 2 minutes, to actually swallow this food. If they don't, they face deductions.
And they absolutely must keep it down. A reversal of fortune, which, by the way, is ESPN's incredibly polite term for throwing up, results in instant disqualification, and they are super strict about it. Even small amounts of food falling from the mouth that judges deem came from the stomach can end a champion's run right then and there.
And speaking of champions, you really have to marvel at their sheer stomach elasticity. I mean, the reigning giants of the sport are Joey Chestnut, who set a mind-boggling record of 76 hot dogs in 2021, and Miki Sudo, who's completely dominated the female-only tournament with a record of 51 hot dogs. It is just an astonishing physical feat.
However, as an explainer, we definitely have to look at the full picture here, because not everyone celebrates this extreme consumption. Take this really striking quote from competitive eater Patrick Bertoletti, who said, "It's like controlled bulimia. It's bulimia where you get paid for it." Medical professionals and psychiatrists have heavily criticized the sport. They note the terrible example it sets during a nationwide obesity epidemic, and they highlight the psychological toll, comparing it directly to eating disorders.
And the physical dangers, they are very real too. Competitors risk delayed stomach emptying, severe stomach perforations known as Boerhaave syndrome, and even water intoxication just from training. Most severely, though, choking is a constant looming threat, and tragically, it is the primary cause of fatalities in both amateur and professional eating contests all around the world.
Section 5. Fireworks, Fire, and Safety.
So, from the crazy feats of the stomach, let's transition over to the final element of our thematic arc, the most iconic symbol of the holiday, fireworks. Now, fireworks were actually invented in China thousands of years ago. Initially, they were just hollow bamboo packed with saltpeter that exploded with a really loud bang to scare off spirits. But surprisingly, they weren't colorful for most of their history. It wasn't until the 1800s that Italian pyrotechnicians figured out that by adding metallic powders to the explosive mix, they could create the brilliant reds, whites, and blues that absolutely define our modern Independence Day skies.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to ponder. From the quiet elegance of poached salmon and the wild stunts of Victorian tightrope walkers, all the way to modern competitive eaters downing 76 hot dogs under a canopy of colorful pyrotechnics, traditions change. So, what bizarre, unpredictable celebration will define Independence Day in another 100 years? I want to thank you all so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your curiosity fired up, and I'll see you next time.